Hello and welcome. My name is Isabel. I'm a linguistics student, and my project is about listener ideology and perception of non-native speech volume. So first off, non-native speech refers to the speech of someone who is not a native speaker of the language they're using. And our research is asking, do a listener's ideological attitudes influence how loud they think a non-native English speaker is? So why are we asking this? There are a few key pieces of background here. First of all, we know that people make social judgments based on speech. When listeners hear particular languages or accents, we often make stereotyped social judgments about the speaker based on the accent that are about the speaker's personal traits, like their intelligence, their friendliness, or other characteristics. In addition, the perceived social identity of a speaker, like their race or nationality, can influence things like how understandable we think they are or how strong we think their accent is. And both of those points apply to non-native speech and speakers. But importantly, very few speech perception studies have looked at listeners' social beliefs, and very few have looked at perception of volume. And volume is worth studying because it could have real-world consequences. Someone we perceive as loud, we're going to judge differently than someone we perceive as quiet. And listeners' perception of volume may also reflect deeper attitudes they have about the speaker, which is where ideology comes in. So for this project, our research question again is, do listeners' ideological beliefs determine how they perceive the volume of non-native speech? And in this case, ideology means nationalism versus globalism, where nationalism encompasses a set of attitudes that are generally unreceptive to foreign language and culture, while globalism reflects a more receptive attitude. And we hypothesized that listeners who tend towards nationalism would hear non-native speech as loud compared to native English. The idea here is that a perception that non-native speech is loud might reflect an ideologically based attitude that the speech is annoying or intrusive. So to test this, moving to methods, we ran an experiment in which our participants, who were all native English speakers, listened to a series of sentences in different languages and accents, and they rated the volume of each sentence on a scale from 1 to 9, with 1 being quiet and 9 being really loud. The sentences included Mandarin, Spanish, and Turkish. They included English, spoken with a Mandarin, Spanish, or Turkish accent, and they also included native English. So essentially, we had accented English, native English, and other languages. And the participants heard these sentences in a random order and rated their volume. And after they did this volume task, they filled out a questionnaire that elicited their agreement with either nationalist or globalist ideological attitudes. And what we found, moving to key findings and the results, was that the participants consistently rated native English as louder than all of the other stimuli. So non-native English and other languages were both perceived as quieter. A limitation here is that the vast majority of the participant pool aligned with globalist ideological attitudes. So our ideology data is limited. But we did find that the less globalist a participant was, the more likely they were to perceive a bigger difference between native English and non-native English. So there is a hint of an ideology pattern there. But what can we conclude from this? It's not what we hypothesized. One major possibility is that comprehensibility caused English to be heard as the loudest. So in other words, our participants were native English speakers. So maybe they heard the native English sentences as loudest because they were the most understandable, the most meaningful. And that translated as a perception that native English was louder. However, that's only a potential explanation for the pattern we're observing. To clarify what these results mean, we need future research that includes a measure for comprehension to establish whether that's really related to these volume ratings. We also need more research to clarify the role of ideology, since our participant pool didn't end up being diverse enough to draw solid conclusions. What we do know is that for these listeners, native English speech was perceived as loudest above all other speech, and non-native speech was perceived as quieter. That perception has implications for real-world interaction. Do we perceive non-native speakers as quieter or less noticeable? And what impact does that have on communication? It's certainly worth more extensive research. So thank you so much for listening about my thesis project, and have a great rest of your day.